Welcome to today's deep dive. I am so glad you're here with us.
Yeah, really excited to get into this one. It's a heavy topic, but super important,
It really is. And, today is Saturday, July 4, 2026.
right? Independence Day.
Exactly. It's this perfect day to reflect on, well, freedom, right? Independence. But also, I think, the hidden emotional weights that so many people carry around every single day.
Yeah, those invisible prisons, the things that keep us from actually feeling free.
That's beautifully put. And to unpack that, we are drawing on some truly incredible source material today. We're looking at a fascinating interview transcript with Zahava Farbman.
Yes. And if you aren't familiar with her, she is an absolute powerhouse. She's a crisis and trauma intervention expert with like almost 30 years of field work.
30 years. I mean, that is just wild. She spent 25 of those years with Chai Lifeline.
Right, the International Health Support Network.
Yeah, and she's done extensive work alongside first responders like Hatsala, which is this massive volunteer ambulance service.
Mostly operating in densely populated Orthodox Jewish communities, right? Like the Five Towns area in Long Island.
Exactly. And more recently, she's been doing this really groundbreaking emotional support work with the Aleph Institute. We'll get into that later.
And, our mission today is really to decode this source material, to uncover the actual hidden mechanics of human grief.
Yes, and we're going to talk about the single most crucial mistake that people make right after a tragedy.
And frankly, how to show up for the people you care about without, inadvertently causing more psychological damage, which happens a lot.
It happens so much. So whether you are supporting a friend in crisis right now, or maybe you're managing your own past hurts, or even if you're just intensely curious about human resilience, you're going to want to take mental notes today.
Oh, absolutely. Grab a notebook for this one.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the reality of Zahava's job is, well, it's intense.
That's an understatement.
Right. Usually when we think of a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of clinical precision. It feels almost like engineering.
You break your arm, they do an x-ray, and boom, there's the jagged white line.
Exactly. The doctor just points at the screen and says, there it is. That is the problem. Let's fix it.
It gives us so much comfort, right? As a society, we're just deeply attached to the idea that injuries should be visible. They should be categorizable.
But the second you step into the world of profound human grief or sudden tragedy, that whole diagnostic machine just completely breaks down.
It shatters. You can't put a broken heart on a slide under a microscope. You can't slide a shattered sense of reality into an MRI machine.
Right, and that's exactly what makes Zahava's perspective so vital, because she's not a traditional therapist sitting in a quiet office 6 months after the fact.
No, she is the person getting the phone call the minute the unthinkable happens.
She is physically walking into living rooms or hospital waiting rooms literally minutes after a family gets the worst news of their lives. She runs directly into the burning buildings of human grief.
And because of that, she frames her role in a really specific way. The transcript notes that she doesn't see herself as a clinician trying to fix a broken system.
Right, what was that quote? Something about her shoulders.
Yeah, she says, I may be small, but I have big shoulders. I wish I could take away the pain. There's no way that I can. But I'm here to help them carry it.
Wow. I'm here to help them carry it. That completely reorients how we think about crisis intervention. Her goal isn't resolution, it's stabilization.
Exactly. She's strictly there to manage the acute shock phase. But to really understand how she does that, we have to talk about vocabulary.
Oh, yes, because we ruin these words in our daily lives.
We really do. We misuse clinical language all the time.
Right, like someone will say, I had a crisis at work today because the printer jammed.
Or, oh my gosh, that dinner party was so traumatizing.
Yes, but in Zahava's world, the source material draws a super rigid line between a crisis and a trauma. They are fundamentally different biological events.
They are. So a crisis, in this clinical context, is a severe everyday disruption. It's highly stressful.
Spikes your cortisol.
Right. You might lose sleep. But it stays within the boundaries of normal human experience.
The examples she gives in the interview are so relatable, like you're driving to a huge job interview and you get hopelessly lost.
Or your childcare falls through on a day of a massive presentation, or bad weather triggers a horrible migraine.
Those are crises, they're logistical nightmares. But the key thing is, your brain actually has pre-installed coping mechanisms for them.
Exactly. Your internal system recognizes the shape of the problem. So you take a deep breath, you call the interviewer to apologize, you scramble for a babysitter.
You take your migraine meds and lie in a dark room. Your neural pathways have a map for this. The system bends, but it doesn't break.
Right. But trauma is when that internal map just completely collapses.
It's an event so unprecedented, so far outside normal existence, that those innate coping mechanisms just short circuit.
It's like a computer processor trying to open a file format it's never seen before.
Yeah.
The system throws a catastrophic error and shuts down. The prefrontal cortex, the logical part of the brain, gets totally hijacked by the amygdala.
The fear center.
Right. And because it's a systemic failure, you can't treat the resulting grief like an illness. Zahava is so intense about this point.
She really is. Society wants to medicalize grief like it's the flu.
Yeah, like, oh, take this time, do the work, and you'll be cured. You'll go back to normal.
But Zahava says absolutely not. Grief creates a new normal. The person you were before the trauma, they're gone.
There is no going back. And
Yeah.
she actually pulls from Viktor Frankl here, the famous psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor.
The founder of logotherapy, right?
Yes. She relies heavily on this one quote from him. An abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is totally normal.
Oh man, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is totally normal. Just hearing that is like a massive psychological relief valve.
It really is. It takes away all that societal pressure to perform grief correctly.
Like if you hear catastrophic news and your immediate reaction is to sit on the floor and just scream for an hour.
Or if your brain protects you by making you laugh hysterically, which happens.
Or going completely catatonic. Society rushes to call that a breakdown.
But Zahava and Frankl are pointing out that the situation is the breakdown. The reaction is just your nervous system trying to process the unprocessable.
Okay, but this brings up a really interesting scenario from the interview. The car crash example.
Oh, right. This perfectly illustrates how bespoke trauma is. So Zahava describes two people in the exact same minor fender bender.
Low speed, no bad injuries, just bent metal and airbags.
Exactly. Now, person A steps out of the car and completely spirals. Their nervous system is hijacked. They're terrified of getting PTSD. They're anticipating insomnia. They're already dreading the sound of crunching metal in their sleep.
So for person A, this crossed the line into trauma.
Yes, but then you have person B. They were in the passenger seat. Same car, same physical forces.
But a totally different internal reality.
Completely. Person B has a headache from the airbag, sure, but their main thought is gratitude. Like, thank God it wasn't worse.
Right, their plan is just to go home, maybe call their mom, read some psalms, take a walk. For them, it was just a crisis. It didn't become a trauma. So this makes me wonder, are we just born resilient, or are some of us just doomed to be traumatized by everything? Like, is it nature or nurture?
It's definitely an intricate matrix of both. Biology plays a role, for sure. Some people naturally clear stress hormones like cortisol faster.
Okay, so there is a physical baseline.
There is. But that baseline is heavily modified by the work you do. Has person B spent years doing therapy? Do they have somatic techniques to calm their nervous system?
And their worldview, right. Zahava talks about how having a foundational faith or ethical framework acts as a massive psychological buffer.
Exactly. It gives the brain a way to categorize the suffering instead of just being swallowed by it.
The way I think about it is like the shock absorbers on a car.
Oh, I like that.
Right, like your coping mechanisms, your therapy, your worldview, those are your shock absorbers. And a crisis is just a pothole.
A bad day at work, a financial stressor.
Yeah. The car jolts, it's really uncomfortable, but the shocks absorb it. You keep driving. The car is structurally fine.
But a trauma.
A trauma isn't a pothole. A trauma is driving that car off a 50-foot cliff.
Right. It doesn't matter how good your shock absorbers are. They weren't built for that. The whole suspension system breaks.
And what the car crash example shows is that for some people, because they lack those shock absorbers, maybe biology, maybe lack of self-work, hitting a moderate pothole actually feels like driving off a cliff. Their system bottoms out immediately.
And when that happens, when you're in free fall, what is the natural human instinct?
You want to neutralize the pain immediately.
Exactly. You look for an exit strategy. We want to numb it, medicate it, dissociate. But the source material warns that this is literally the worst thing you can do.
The absolute worst. Her central thesis is so uncompromising you have to go through the pain.
Not around it. Not on top of it. Not underneath it.
Because in this context, pain isn't just a feeling. It's data. It's your brain logging the reality of what happened.
And if you use medication or alcohol or just sheer denial to block that data, it doesn't disappear. It gets stored.
And it comes back to bite you. The concept of delayed trauma in this interview is terrifying.
It really is insidious. You could have someone who loses a loved one in their 20s. They power through, they throw themselves into work.
Everyone tells them they're so strong.
Right. They think they beat the system. And then at 45, their life just completely unravels for seemingly no reason.
The examples she gives of this are haunting, like women who lost their mothers when they were very young and they were shielded from the grief by well-meaning adults.
Yes. Decades later, they become mothers themselves. And that biological reality of having a baby suddenly triggers all that locked-away grief.
The brain recognizes the vulnerability and the terror comes flooding back. It manifests as being suffocatingly overprotective or even emotionally detached from their own kids.
Because they're terrified of losing them. The body kept the score.
And this leads right into the story about her sister, Maki, which is just, wow.
Maki's story is a masterclass in this. It's so intense. Maki's husband died incredibly suddenly. Just a shocking tragedy.
And Zahava gets to the house. She's the grieving sister, but she's also the crisis expert. Maki is obviously in absolute agony.
And the house is full of extended family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what do they want to do? They want to medicate Maki. They want to give her sedatives to blunt the shock.
Because hearing someone scream in that kind of visceral pain activates our own fight or flight. Meditating her would have made the room more comfortable for them.
Exactly. But Zahava steps in against the whole room and tells Maki she cannot take the medication.
She literally says, you need to feel this pain. You need to be fully present at the funeral, which to an outsider sounds so cruel.
It goes against every protective instinct we have. But Zahava knew that if Maki slept through the acute phase in a chemical haze, her brain would fail to log the reality of the loss.
She'd be setting herself up for protracted, complicated grief for years.
And Maki trusted her. She refused the sedatives. She went through the fire.
And the proof that it worked is that Maki later wrote an article in the Five Towns Jewish Times publicly thanking Zahava. She thanked her for forcing her to feel the pain.
What's fascinating here is how this pushes back against toxic positivity, the good vibes only culture.
Oh, I can't stand that. The people at the funeral saying God needed another angel or look for the silver lining.
It's like putting a Hello Kitty Band-Aid on a hemorrhaging wound.
Fair.
It does nothing for the injured person. It just makes the person applying it feel helpful.
It totally invalidates their reality. But Zahava says the real key of survival is dialectical thinking, holding opposing truths.
Right. Truth A is the devastation. You are allowed to be destroyed. You can scream. You could be furious at God, at the doctors.
But you don't stop there.
No. You also hold truth B, which is the belief that despite this horror, you still have value, people care about you, and eventually you will find the stamina to survive it.
You can be entirely shattered and still have a tiny ember of belief that your life isn't over. You don't have to choose between being broken and being resilient.
You have to inhabit the devastation to earn the resilience.
Which brings up a great question for you listening right now. Think about a painful event from, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah, look back at your own timeline.
Did you go through the pain or did you detour around it? Did you bury yourself in work? And how is that unprocessed data showing up in your life today?
And if you did detour, the source material makes it clear. It's never too late to open that file. Zahava mentions resources like the book Mothers Without Mothers. You can always process it.
The toll always comes due, but the window to pay it never closes. That's a comfort.
But, everything we've talked about so far assumes we're dealing with adults. Adults who understand abstract concepts and opposing truths.
Right. Which brings us to the hardest part of Zahava's job. What happens when the person whose world just ended is an 8-year-old child?
This is where the transcript gets hyper-practical. Because breaking unbreakable news to a developing brain requires a completely different protocol.
I can't even imagine the weight of walking into a room to tell a kid playing a video game that their parent is dead. It's staggering.
It is. But she has this very specific protocol based on cognitive processing speeds.
And the very first rule is pacing.
Yes. When it's a sudden death, the child's brain has no prep time. So you have to radically slow down your delivery. You use dramatic pauses.
You speak a few words and you intentionally stop.
Right. And the biological reason for this is to let the child's brain run ahead of your words. You're forcing their nervous system to start assuming the worst before you even say it.
See, when I read that, my first reaction was, wait, that sounds so harsh, stringing it out and letting them sit in terror.
It feels wrong, but if you drop it like a blunt force blow, their system will just freeze. The pause lets their amygdala gradually escalate. And often, during that pause, the kid will ask, did he die?
And when they ask that, Their brain has caught up. And that leads to her biggest rule: the one adults hate.
No euphemisms.
None. You have to use the real words. You say dead. You say his body stopped working and he is not coming back.
You don't say he passed away, and you absolutely never say he's sleeping or he went on a trip.
I get why adults want to soften the blow. Telling a 6-year-old their dad's heart stopped feels brutal. We want to say he went to sleep and is an angel now.
But developmentally, kids before 7 or 8 are intensely literal. They don't do metaphors. If you tell a 4-year-old that death is sleeping, you haven't softened death.
You've weaponized sleep.
Exactly. Now, the kid has severe insomnia because they think if they close their eyes, they'll disappear forever.
Or the went on a trip excuse. 6 months later, the surviving parent packs a bag for a weekend business trip, and the kid has a full-blown panic attack at the door.
Because to them, going on a trip means permanent abandonment. In a trauma, kids don't need poetry. They need concrete facts. Clarity is safety.
Clarity is safety. I love that. But you do have to tailor it by age.
For sure. Preschoolers literally don't understand forever. You tell them dad is dead, and 20 minutes later they ask if he's coming home for dinner.
Because they live on a present tense loop.
Right. Now, school-age kids, like 6 to 11, they want the physics. They want the gruesome details.
Yeah. What did the car look like? Why couldn't they open the door?
And adults panic and try to hide the details.
But from a developmental psychology standpoint, they need those details to solve the spatial puzzle. If you hide it, their imagination will invent something way worse.
And then teenagers just go straight to existential dread. If God is good, why did this happen? You just have to engage with that spiral.
And across all ages, you have to normalize the delayed reaction.
Oh, this is the part that catches everyone off guard. You do everything right, you tell the kid the awful news, and they just say, okay, can I go back to playing Minecraft now?
And the adult thinks, oh no, they didn't hear me. Or worse, my kid is a sociopath. But it's just biology. Their brain took in a tiny thimbleful of trauma and then violently shifted focus to a mundane task to prevent a systemic shutdown.
They're microdosing the trauma, and then 2 hours later, they wander into the kitchen and ask, where's daddy? And the adult just has to stay calm, repeat the facts, and offer immediate safety.
It takes so much discipline. But knowing how to handle the family is only half the battle, because the people around the family often completely misread everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This transitions into what the transcript calls the bystander paradox.
Yes. This blew my mind. The idea that neighbors and the community are often doing worse emotionally than the grieving family.
It sounds totally irrational. How is the neighbor 3 doors down crying harder than the new widow?
It's the dichotomy of action versus helplessness. The family is forced into survival mode. They have to deal with funeral directors, bank accounts, feeding their kids. They're in the arena fighting the lion.
The action channels their terrified energy. They're running on adrenaline.
Yeah.
But the community, they're outside the arena.
Watching their own worst nightmare happen to someone else, and they have zero agency to fix it. That helplessness just paralyzes them.
And this leads to Zahava's ultimate rule of thumb. Nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors.
We project so much based on outward appearances. You see a family at a funeral looking completely put together, and everyone whispers, wow, they are so strong.
But Zahava knows that the second the front door closes, they completely fall apart.
And vice versa. The families that look utterly broken in public often have this monolithic inner strength.
The source material mentions 2 women specifically, Zipporah Sassoon and Rivka.
Right. Zipporah lost 7 siblings in a fire. 7. Just comprehending that is impossible.
And the interviewer notes that outsiders expect her to be suffocated by sorrow. But she's vibrant, funny, light. She integrated the loss without letting it destroy her capacity for joy.
And Rivka, who was permanently paralyzed from the waist down. The community projects total devastation onto her, but she's thriving, getting engaged.
The bystander looks at them and thinks, I would disintegrate if that happened to me. And the transcript explains this through the analogy of the custom shoes.
I love this analogy. If you're cold, you can borrow someone's sweater. It might be big or ugly, but it works.
But you can't borrow someone's shoes for a long journey. If they're too big, you stumble. If they're too small, they cripple you. Shoes have to be custom fit.
Tragedy and the resilience to survive it is custom fit. You receive the exact inner strength tailored to your specific burden. So when you say, I couldn't walk in her shoes, you're right. They weren't made for you.
And realizing that we can't truly access someone else's inner landscape should completely change how we offer support.
Which brings us to the most practical advice for paying a Shiva call or a condolence visit.
Make it about them, not you. 0% about you.
Don't trauma dump. People get uncomfortable in the house of mourning and start crying about their own fears, and suddenly the widow is comforting them.
You are not the protagonist in that room. And my favorite line from Zahava on this: don't pay a Shiva call over the bananas in the supermarket.
Yes. Don't ambush the grieving father in the produce aisle. He's just trying to buy fruit. Don't force him to perform his grief for you right there by the bananas.
Just ask what they practically need. If they want an iced coffee, leave it on the porch and walk away. Relinquish the need to be the savior.
Okay, so sudden death rallies a community, even if they sometimes bungle the support. But what happens when the tragedy makes the community turn its back?
This is a huge shift. We're moving into Zahava's work with the Aleph Institute. They support families navigating the criminal justice system.
And the grief these families experience is called ambiguous loss.
Right. We usually hear that term with dementia, where the body is there but the mind is absent. Incarceration is the inverse. The person is fully intact but physically extracted from the family.
But the difference is the social stigma. If a father dies of a heart attack, the community brings casseroles for a month.
If the father goes to federal prison for a white-collar crime or abuse, the community reaction is systemic shunning. The innocent wife and kids become pariahs. People cross the street to avoid them.
It's horrific. They lose their family structure, their finances, and their entire social network all at once. And Zahava has to go in and explain prison to a 7-year-old whose dad was just taken away in handcuffs.
And she does it brilliantly. She frames it entirely around mistakes. She asks the kid, what happens if you hit your brother? The kid says, time out.
What happens if an adult runs a red light? They get a ticket. She builds this logical ladder of consequences.
And then she says, your dad made a mistake that broke the law. So he has to go to an adult timeout like a work camp to learn not to do it again.
Calling prison an adult timeout strips away the terrifying, violent movie version of jail, and it implicitly tells the kid, your dad's absence is because of his actions, not yours. It stops them from internalizing the blame.
But the external isolation is still brutal. The source material tells this amazing story from a retreat in upstate New York for the wives of incarcerated men. The zipline story.
Oh, this story is everything. You have all these women who are treated as outcasts at home, and 2 of them, Chani and Rifki, are at this high zip line.
Rifki is at the top, absolutely terrified to jump. Chani's on the ground, and she just yells up, Rifki, come on, I gotcha.
And Rifki jumps. Hearing that validation gave her the courage, but the real breakthrough was for Chani.
What's fascinating here is that Chani, a woman whose own community won't even look her in the eye, realized in that moment that she still had value. She still had the power to give someone else confidence.
Society had starved her of the basic human need to matter. And Zahava uses this profound theological framing for these families, the concept of teshuva, or repentance.
Yes, the idea that God created teshuva before creating humans, because it was inherently anticipated that we wouldn't be perfect. We were designed to fail and make mistakes.
So if the universe expects us to fail and provides a path for repair, who are we to permanently write someone off?
Exactly. So the interviewer asks Zahava, what does this mean for the rest of us? And her mandate is clear. Stop gossiping.
Stop consuming other people's trauma as neighborhood entertainment, and instead, practice aggressive inclusion.
She says, buy the kid a lulav and etrog.
Right. The symbols used in the Jewish harvest holiday. Ensure they aren't excluded from community life. Invite them to sit next to you in shul.
Do not make the innocent family serve a life sentence of societal exile for a crime they didn't commit.
So true. Wow. When you step back and look at everything we've covered today, it is just staggering. We redefine trauma entirely.
It's a complete failure of the coping mechanisms, not just a bad day.
We talked about the absolute necessity of facing pain head-on so it doesn't mutate and destroy you decades later.
We learn the protocols for kids. Dramatic pauses, no euphemisms, concrete facts.
We challenged the bystander paradox, the custom shoes analogy, and confronted our own complicity in shunning families facing ambiguous loss.
Which brings us to Zahava's parting wisdom. Always operate on the assumption that you do not know what someone is going through.
Move through the world with extra sensitivity, because behind every put-together face is likely a hidden battle. And prep your shock absorbers now. Build your coping skills before you need them.
Because when the storm hits, you don't have time to build a boat. And I want to leave you with this final lingering thought.
Okay, what is it?
If our natural instinct is to numb pain, and our societal instinct is to shun messy, complicated grief, what if the biggest barrier to human resilience isn't the tragedy itself?
Oh, wow.
What if true healing requires us to finally stop demanding that everyone just get over it And instead, we just sit in the dark with one another.
Sit in the dark with one another because the old normal is gone forever. We started by talking about how easy a broken arm is to diagnose. A nice white line on an x-ray.
But trauma shatters a life in ways no machine can scan. You can't put a plaster cast on grief.
You really can't. The only way we survive is if we have the courage to walk into the fire and the grace to help others carry the weight when they can't. Thank you so much for joining us on this intense, illuminating journey today. Take care of yourselves, look out for each other, and we'll see you next time.